My wife cheated with her coworker while I worked double shifts to pay our bills, so I took everything and walked away without a single warning. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and for most of my life, I believed that hard work could fix anything. I didn't come from money or connections, just long hours, sore hands, and a quiet pride in knowing I'd earned every inch of what I had. People like me don't get shortcuts. We build everything one exhausting day at a time. 5 years ago, I met Lauren. She was a waitress at the same small diner where I worked weekends to make ends meet. She had this warmth, this laugh that made even the slowest shifts feel lighter. We bonded over small dreams, cheap coffee, and the idea that someday we'd make something better of ourselves. She used to say, "You're the kind of man who doesn't just talk about success, you earn it." Back then, that meant everything to me. When we got married, she told me she wanted to chase a career she loved, something creative, something that would make her feel alive. I told her I'd take care of the rest. If she needed time to figure things out, I'd pick up the slack. So I started working 2 jobs, warehouse during the day, delivery runs at night. Some nights I'd barely get 3 hours of sleep, but I'd still leave her a note on the counter. "Have a good day, love you." She used to call me her rock, said I made her feel safe. But lately, her words sound different, less thankful, more expectant. When she says, "You're so dependable," it doesn't sound like admiration anymore. It sounds like obligation, like my reliability has become invisible. Still, every time I see her smiling as I head out the door, I tell myself it's worth it. That every drop of sweat and every sleepless night is building our future. I just didn't realize I was the only one still building it. It started so gradually that I almost missed it. Little things, small silences. Lauren used to hug me when I came home, even if it was late. Now, she barely looks up from her phone. "How was your day?" sounds like a chore, not curiosity. I tell myself she's just tired, that we both are, but there's a tone in her voice that feels different. Detached. She started dressing differently, too. More makeup, expensive perfume, new clothes I didn't recognize from our budget. When I asked, she said her new company values presentation. She'd recently joined a marketing firm and said she wanted to fit in with the team. I believed her, why wouldn't I? She looked beautiful, confident, glowing. I was proud of her, and maybe a little scared that I was starting to feel like the dull one. Our schedules barely align now. I come home from a night shift, and she's already gone. When I get back from my day job, she's working late. We still talk, but our words skim the surface like skipping stones, never deep enough to touch. I mentioned feeling disconnected once, and she laughs softly. "Babe, you're just tired," she says. "You work too much." I smile and nod because she's right. I am tired. Tired of missing her. Tired of chasing a dream that suddenly feels like mine alone. One Friday night, I texted her after finishing my deliveries early. "Want to grab dinner?" I waited 2 hours before she replied. "Sorry, my phone died." Already heading to bed. I believed her. I needed to. Because if I didn't, I'd have to face the creeping thought that maybe she wasn't tired of work. She was tired of me. I brushed it off that night. But something in me knew. This was only the beginning of a distance I couldn't close. It's strange how you can live with someone and still feel completely alone. I'd come home from a 14-hour shift, aching and starving, just hoping to see her smile. Instead, I'd find her on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her laughter soft and private, like it didn't belong to me anymore. She'd started mentioning someone new from work, a guy named Daniel. "He's hilarious," she said once, eyes lighting up. "You'd like him." I forced a grin. "Yeah? Maybe we can all grab dinner sometime." But she just smirked and said, "He's not really the couple dinner type." I tried not to think about it, but that name started living rent-free in my head. I remember one night vividly. I'd saved enough to plan a small weekend getaway for us. A cozy cabin 2 hours out of town. I came home early to surprise her with the idea. She was on the phone, smiling, her voice softer than usual. When she saw me, she jumped slightly, ended the call quickly, and said, "Just work stuff." Then she told me she couldn't go that weekend. "I promised I'd help out at the office," she said, eyes darting away. Something cracked inside me that night. I wanted to argue, to ask why she never had time for us anymore. But instead, I just nodded, told her I understood, and went to bed. She slipped in hours later, smelling faintly of a perfume I didn't recognize. Lying there beside her, I stared at the ceiling, wondering when our home had turned so cold. Her breathing was steady, peaceful, like someone who had nothing to hide. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was miles away, even when her head was on the same pillow. That was the night I realized love can fade quietly, without even the decency of a goodbye. A few weeks later, I decided to do something small but meaningful, bring Lauren lunch at her office. I thought maybe a surprise gesture would remind her we were still a team. I picked up her favorite sandwich, drove across town, and walked into the sleek glass building where she worked. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. Her coworkers exchanged uneasy glances when I asked for her. One woman hesitated before saying, Lauren's out for lunch. That was fine, except her car was parked just outside. I stood there for a moment, the sandwich bag growing warm in my hand. My first thought wasn't anger, it was confusion. I called her, and it rang twice before going to voicemail. I left a message, something cheerful and innocent, pretending everything was normal. But a quiet instinct inside me whispered that it wasn't. When she finally called back that evening, I asked how her day was. Busy, she said casually. Didn't even have time for lunch. I froze. My hand tightened on the steering wheel as I listened to her lie like it was nothing. You should eat better, I said quietly. She laughed. You sound like my dad. That night she came home late, hair damp from a shower she must have taken somewhere else. She kissed my cheek, told me she was exhausted, and went straight to bed. There was a different scent on her, something floral, not the perfume she usually wore. As I lay beside her, I told myself not to be paranoid, that she was stressed, not deceitful, that love meant trust, even when it hurt. But for the first time, the silence between us didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a stranger had moved into my wife's body, and I was sleeping beside her. I used to think the worst kind of pain was losing someone. But it's not. It's realizing they've been gone for a long time, and you were too blind to notice. One night, while doing laundry, I found a hotel receipt tucked in Lauren's purse. It was from the weekend she claimed to be working late. A fancy downtown hotel, 2 entrees on the bill, and the name Daniel H. scrawled on a small bar tab attached to it. I stood there, staring at the paper like it was written in a language I didn't want to understand. My chest went tight. My first thought wasn't rage, it was disbelief. When she came home that night, I was sitting at the kitchen table. She kissed me on the head, humming softly as she dropped her bag. Long day, she asked. My voice almost cracked when I said, yeah, laundry day. She smiled, completely unaware that the walls were closing in around her. I wanted to confront her right there, demand the truth, but I couldn't. I needed proof, not emotion. I needed to know. Over the next few days, I became someone I didn't recognize. I checked phone bills, bank statements, social media tags, every detail that could expose the cracks in our marriage. Each discovery made my stomach turn. Late-night Uber rides, work dinners that didn't exist on her calendar, the same number popping up over and over again. That's when the denial finally broke. My wife wasn't tired. She wasn't stressed. She wasn't busy with work. She was in love with someone who wasn't me. And as that realization settled in, something cold and clear replaced my heartbreak. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there in silence, whispering to myself, she has no idea what she started. That was the night I stopped being her husband and started becoming her consequence. From that night on, every breath I took was calculated. I stopped being the man who trusted blindly and became the man who watched everything. I smiled when she spoke, laughed when she lied, and pretended to be the dependable husband she thought she'd fooled. Behind that mask, I was documenting everything. Every call, every late-night text, every trace of her second life. I started small. I checked her car's mileage, her calendar, her work emails. I learned the pattern: Tuesdays and Thursdays, late meetings. Friday nights, girls' night. Always the same hours. Always the same location ping from her phone. It wasn't hard to confirm. Daniel worked in the same building. The same hours. The same lies. At home, I began creating distance. I opened a separate bank account. Quietly transferred small amounts every week so it wouldn't raise suspicion. Changed my online passwords. Rerouted my direct deposits. It was strange how calm I felt. I wasn't panicking anymore. I was planning. One night, she called from the office, her voice soft and flirtatious in the background noise. I put her on speaker and listened, really listened, to the sound of someone else's laughter echoing near her. When she hung up, I sat there in the dark, completely numb. The next morning, she kissed my cheek on her way out and said, "Don't work too hard, okay?" I smiled back and replied, "You too." It was the first time my words meant something entirely different. I wasn't her safety net anymore. I was the storm she didn't see coming. And as I watched her drive away that morning, I realized something chilling. She thought she was playing me. But in reality, I'd already started writing the ending to her story, one she'd never expect. There's a strange calm that comes before your world collapses, like your body knows what's coming before your heart does. That night, I felt it. My delivery shift got canceled due to a storm, so I decided to come home early. For once, I thought I'd surprise Lauren with takeout and a movie. Maybe some part of me still hoped I was wrong, that there was still a version of her worth saving. Her car was already in the driveway. The house was dark. I remember thinking maybe she fell asleep early. But when I stepped inside, I heard it, the faint sound of laughter. A man's voice, then hers. That gentle, soft tone she hadn't used with me in months. I froze in the hallway, my body refusing to move. I could see the dim lights spilling from our bedroom door, slightly open. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I wish I could stay like this forever. The air left my lungs. My hands were trembling, but I didn't push the door open. I didn't scream or make a scene. I just left. I stepped outside, sat in my truck, and stared at the rain hitting the windshield until everything blurred. I don't remember how long I sat there, but the numbness was worse than any anger I'd ever felt. For hours, I replayed every lie, every late night, every touch that suddenly felt like a ghost. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just existed, breathing in betrayal. By dawn, I knew something inside me had died. But what surprised me was what replaced it. Not rage, not revenge, just clarity. The kind that comes when you realize the person you built your world around was never your foundation at all. That night broke me, but it also made me something she could never imagine. By the next morning, I wasn't the same man who had left that house broken. Something inside me had gone quiet, dangerously quiet. I called in sick to both jobs and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my hands. Every callus, every scar, every long shift I'd ever worked, it had all gone into building a life she'd set on fire. I decided that if she could treat my love like a resource, I'd treat her betrayal like a blueprint. First, I withdrew every cent from our joint savings. Slowly, methodically, I knew she rarely checked statements. Next, I called our landlord and transferred the lease solely into my name. She had begged me to keep everything under one account for simplicity. I smiled, realizing that simplicity was about to destroy her comfort. Then came the credit cards. I froze them all, citing suspicious activity. At night, I kept playing my role. When she came home, I cooked dinner, made small talk, even asked about her busy day. She didn't notice a thing. Her laughter had returned, her mood lighter than ever, probably because she thought I was still in the dark. I watched her smile across the table, pretending she was winning. But every word, every gesture was part of my preparation. I gathered evidence, screenshots, receipts, hotel confirmations. I kept copies at work, on a USB drive, even mailed one to my lawyer friend just in case she tried to twist the story later. Lauren thought she had all the control, that I'd crumble like the dependable fool she married. But the truth was, she'd already lost the game. And as I watched her scroll through her phone that night, grinning at messages she thought were secret, I realized I no longer felt pain, just patience. The kind that comes right before the world shifts back into balance. A few weeks later, Lauren's birthday rolled around. She was buzzing with excitement, planning a fancy dinner with her coworkers and friends, people from her new circle. She invited me, of course, probably to keep appearances intact. I agreed, smiling, pretending to be the devoted husband everyone believed I was. What she didn't know was that this would be the last night she'd ever see me that way. I spent that day calmly, almost eerily so. I dressed neatly, bought her favorite flowers, and wrapped her gift in a simple white box. Inside it was a folder, hotel receipts, screenshots of her messages with Daniel, photos of them together outside that downtown hotel. Every lie she'd told me, bound neatly in paper and proof. The restaurant was full of laughter when I arrived. Lauren looked stunning, radiant, wearing the dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the same one she once wore on a work trip. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, eyes gleaming with pride as she introduced me around. "This is my husband, the hardest worker I know." she said, like it was a punchline. Everyone chuckled politely. When it was time for gifts, I handed her mine. Open it, I said softly. She tore the ribbon, smiling wide, until the smile froze. The color drained from her face. Silence spread across the table as the first few pages slipped out. Her texts, her photos, her betrayal in black and white. No one spoke. The only sound was the faint music playing from the bar. I looked at her, calm and composed, and said, "You don't get to humiliate the man who built your life." Then I stood, placed the flowers on the table, and walked out. Behind me, I heard the quiet sound of her crying. But I didn't turn around. That night wasn't about anger. It was about reclaiming my dignity. The next morning, I woke up in a small motel on the edge of town. The sun was pouring through the blinds, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel weighed down. My phone was buzzing nonstop, missed calls, messages, and voicemails from Lauren. Some were angry, some desperate, and a few just said, "Please, we can fix this." But there was nothing to fix. You can't rebuild trust that's been incinerated. I didn't respond. Not once. I blocked her number, deleted our shared accounts, and finalized every step I'd started weeks ago. By noon, I'd spoken to my lawyer. The divorce papers were drafted and ready for her signature. I made sure everything was clean, legal, and airtight. No room for emotional pleas or manipulations. Later that week, word spread fast. A mutual friend texted me, "You really dropped the hammer." Apparently, Daniel got demoted after the dinner fallout. Lauren was facing whispers at work, her perfect life, crumbling under the same spotlight she'd used to show off. I didn't feel joy in her downfall, just closure. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted distance. My nights were quiet now. I'd come home to silence, cook whatever I wanted, fall asleep on a couch that didn't smell like her perfume. It was peaceful, empty, but peaceful. The kind of emptiness that feels like a clean slate instead of a wound. Sometimes, I'd catch myself remembering how she used to laugh, or the way she used to hold my hand in the diner years ago. And for a brief moment, I'd mourn that version of her, the one who loved me before the lies began. But then I'd remember the man I became to survive her betrayal. For the first time in years, silence didn't mean loneliness. It meant freedom. Months passed, and the chaos that once consumed my life began to fade like background noise. I moved to a smaller apartment near the city, a quiet place with peeling walls and a view of the skyline. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every time I unlocked that door after work, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. I started rediscovering parts of myself that had gone missing during the marriage. I picked up my old guitar, began running again, even reconnected with a few friends I'd lost touch with because I'd been too busy. They didn't ask for details, they just listened. For the first time, I could talk about my pain without shame. One evening, after a long day at work, I opened my email and saw her name. Lauren. My heart still tightened at the sight, though not out of love, just habit. The subject line read, "Please, just one conversation." Against my better judgment, I clicked it. Her words were long, tearful, nostalgic. She wrote that she missed me, that Daniel had left her, that she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. I stared at the message for a long time, rereading certain lines, wondering if she actually believed what she wrote, or if it was just regret, not remorse. My hand hovered over the reply button, but I didn't type a single word. I closed the email, deleted it, and sat there in the quiet. That night, I poured myself a drink and looked out at the city lights, thinking about how much I'd changed. Once upon a time, I would have done anything to save that marriage. But now, I realized something simple and brutal. I didn't lose her, she lost me. And that, more than anything, was enough closure. A year later, life felt like mine again. I'd been promoted at work, started a small side business with a friend, and finally learned what peace actually feels like when it isn't built on sacrifice. I wasn't bitter anymore, just older, wiser, quieter. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from pain, but from surviving it. One afternoon, while picking up lunch near my old neighborhood, I ran into one of Lauren's former coworkers. She recognized me immediately. "Wow, you look good," she said, almost surprised. Then she hesitated before adding, "I'm sorry for what happened back then. Lauren's not doing well." I didn't ask, but she told me anyway. Daniel had left her a few months after I walked out. Her reputation tanked, she lost her job, and she'd moved back in with her parents. She talks about you sometimes, she said softly. Says you were the best thing that ever happened to her. I just smiled faintly. No, I said. I was the best thing she ever had. And then I walked away. Driving home, I felt no anger, no triumph. Just a strange, calm acceptance. Sometimes life doesn't give you the revenge you imagine. It gives you something better. The quiet satisfaction of knowing you survived what was meant to destroy you. That you came out stronger while they were left with the consequences they created. When I got home, I parked my truck, stepped inside my apartment, and looked around at the life I'd rebuilt, simple, peaceful, and entirely mine. I thought about everything she took from me, and everything I'd taken back without saying a single word. The truth is, I didn't need to ruin her. I just had to walk away. Because sometimes, the loudest revenge isn't destruction, it's indifference. And when I closed the door that night, I finally realized silence isn't emptiness. It's victory.